And I call on Emma Harper to open the debate for around 7 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. February 25th through to March the 2nd marks Eating Disorders Awareness Week for this year, 2019. The theme this year is tackling discrimination and breaking down the stereotypes associated with eating disorders. And I'd like to start by thanking my colleagues across Chamber who have signed my motion, allowing us to have this important debate to raise awareness of eating disorders this evening. For many years, this debate was proposed by former MSP Dennis Robertson, who still champions this issue, and I'm happy to continue to bring it to the Scottish Parliament. And I remind Chamber that Claire Hawkey led this debate last year. My motion states that there are approximately 1.25 million people across the UK who have an eating disorder, and last year in Scotland, 536 people were treated for an eating disorder. I would like to acknowledge the charities that are instrumental in supporting many people across Scotland and the rest of the UK, the Scottish Eating Disorders Interest Group, as well as the charity BEAT, and I welcome members of BEAT to the gallery and those watching online today. They provide support that's absolutely vital for families, professionals and people who are seeking advice, help and support with the many challenges faced by someone either at risk of developing or who has been diagnosed with an eating disorder. The info they provide on the web is very valuable, and I would encourage people to access the sites to see for themselves what information is out there. There's research that's been posted by BEAT on Monday this week, which states that stereotypes about who gets an eating disorder prevents BAME, LGBT+, and people from less affluent backgrounds from seeking and getting medical treatment. And I'd like to focus my speech this evening on the need to tackle stigma surrounding eating disorders and the announcement on Monday from the Scottish Government to better improve the way we support and treat those presenting with eating disorders, as well as the need for continued research into and support for people living with diabulimia. Presiding Officer, the definition of an eating disorder is when someone develops an unhealthy attitude towards food. This can take over their life and make them very ill. There are various forms of eating disorders, from anorexia, where people try to keep their weight as low as possible by not eating or over-exercising, or bulimia, where people can lose control and eat a lot of food in a very short amount of time and they're deliberately sick, as well as others such as binge eating, and there are non-specific eating disorders as well. The key symptoms of these disorders include excessively worrying about weight and body shape, avoiding social situations where food may be involved, frequently visiting the toilet after meals and returning maybe perhaps looking a bit flushed, and not being upfront about particular food that may be consumed. And it is important for family members, friends and colleagues to be aware of these signs. Research has shown that there is a link between eating disorders and depression, low confidence and low self-esteem. Presiding Officer, I'd like to touch on the relationship between social media use and eating disorders in young people. Social media sites allow today's youth the opportunity to connect with others in multiple platforms and venues, which is great as it allows connections to be made, as well as the sharing of ideas, knowledge and information. However, I am sure that all of us in Chamber will be aware that social media can also be a dangerous platform for hate and discrimination. And because engaging in various forms of social media has become a routine activity for adolescents today, and indeed adults as well, it is important to consider how it has impacted on young people at risk of developing eating disorders. Seeing dieting ads or frequently being exposed to images that may provoke body image concerns can have a damaging and dangerous impact on young people, particularly those who are at risk of developing an eating disorder. It may be as high as 12% in girls, that research has suggested, and is increasingly recognised in males as well. Yes, of course.
I wonder, would Emma Harper agree with me that there is a real responsibility on celebrities not to promote products which are dangerous, particularly for women and young girls? And would she agree that the Advertising Standards Authority should definitely look into this area to restrict it?
Emma Harper.
I thank Shona Robertson for that intervention. That is actually a great point that you've made. So I would encourage the Advertising Standards Authorities to look into this, and I would agree that people who are personalities out in the media system are responsible as well in promoting certain products. So thank you for that intervention. Social media interactions are often an extension of an adolescent's life, so being aware of online use and the issues that children today may be facing online is an important part of what we have to do. And I would ask the Scottish Government to keep this in mind when overseeing the development of any proposed guidance. I was pleased to see the announcement from the Minister on Monday confirming that the Scottish Government will ask the Scottish Intercollegiate Guidelines Network, SIGN, to introduce new guidelines to support the treatment and care of people living with eating disorders in Scotland. I was particularly pleased to see that these guidelines will focus on Scotland's unique cultural and geographical makeup, which will seek to better improve services in our remote and rural communities, such as in Dumfries and Galloway in my South Scotland region, where people may experience greater difficulties in accessing specialist treatment. Indeed, when my office contacted the dietetic team at NHS Dumfries and Galloway yesterday, it was confirmed that because of the rurality of Dumfries and Galloway, some people who are at risk of developing an eating disorder may not be picked up as easily or may be reluctant to access support because of the travel involved in attending appointments. I highlighted this in my contribution to eating disorders debate last year, so I'm pleased to see the Scottish Government take on board these asks, which I raised on behalf of my constituents. Additionally, I'm pleased to see the Scottish Government's announcement will not purely focus on young people and will also look to better inform clinicians on best practice when dealing with adults presenting with eating disorders. I would also like to acknowledge Diabetes UK as well as Diabetes Scotland, who have carried out a great deal of work with both at the Diabetes Cross-Party Group, and as co-chair I've become quite familiar with many of the issues presented, as well as sponsoring parliamentary receptions. Diabetes UK and Diabetes Scotland have worked to raise awareness and understanding of diabulimia. That's a term used among the diabetes community, and although it has not officially been recognised by the ICD, the International Classification of Disease Index, it is a very real eating disorder. Diabulimia refers to a person with type 1 diabetes who purposely reduces their insulin dose or omits their insulin to control their weight. Many years ago, when growing up with type 1 myself, I knew a young woman who died of the condition, and I was only aware that she had just stopped taking her insulin because she thought she was too heavy. Current research has shown that people with this condition have a much shorter lifespan. It can lead to severe diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA, which is severe high blood glucose levels, which can be fatal if not treated by medical professionals, requiring an acute hospital admission. It can also cause complications of diabetes such as retinopathy, neuropathy and nephropathy. It is difficult to diagnose and is extremely complex. People with diabulimia require mental health support as well as the physical medical needs associated with diabetes. Like any eating disorder, it is a mental health issue, so healthcare professionals and the family and friends of those with type 1 diabetes should be aware that signs could indicate diabulimia. They suggest that this might be weight loss or fluctuation in weight, regular symptoms of high blood glucose levels, secrecy over or fear of injections, maybe reluctance to be weighed, lack of blood glucose monitoring or a reluctance to monitor, and an encyclopedic knowledge of nutritional composition of foods. I would also like to ask the Scottish Government what guidance and support it is able to provide me to engage with ICD to support the diagnosis of diabulimia as a standalone illness, as it is my understanding that ICD are responsible for recognising health conditions in Scotland. I would also like to commend the work of the Children and Young People's Mental Health Task Force, chaired by Dr. Dame Denise Koya, who has created an ambitious plan to support the needs of children and young people to help address their needs when facing issues around diet, exercise and the challenges that they face in tackling their eating disorder. The ambitious plan by the Scottish Government means that our young people get the right treatment in the right place at the right time. and I look forward to seeing further guidance on this. In conclusion, I'd like to welcome the Scottish Government's recent announcement of a package of measures to support better eating disorders, in particular to improve specialist services for people living in our remote and rural areas. And again, I would like to reiterate my ask for the Government to support engagement with ICD to explore options of getting diabulimia recognised as a standalone condition, and I look forward to hearing the contributions from everyone else this evening. Thank you.